On WNIN Lawmakers this week, our guest is Indiana Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. We'll also get an update from the Indiana General Assembly and from Governor Holcomb's annual State of the State address. That's coming up next. Welcome to WNIN Lawmakers. I'm David James, host of WNIN's 2 Main Street, filling in for John Gibson. Our guest this week is Indiana Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. Now, before we speak to the Lieutenant Governor, Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on this week at the State House.
Proposed legislation would require school board candidates to declare a political party. The bill's author, Republican J.D. Prescott, says he thinks it will give voters more insight into a candidate's beliefs. Nearly 24 people testified in a House committee on the bill, all of them opposed. They worry it will limit qualified candidates' interest in and access to school board races. The House Ways and Means Committee advanced legislation that includes a mix of business, utility, and individual income tax cuts that will eventually cost the state more than $1 billion a year in revenue. The bill comes as Indiana government recently posted a $4 billion budget surplus. Republicans also rejected every proposal Democrats made for the bill, including a child care tax credit and an increased renter's deduction. And Governor Eric Holcomb delivered his 6th State of the State address. He used it to pitch his recently unveiled 2022 agenda, highlighted by a proposed business tax cut. The speech didn't include any new or surprising information. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And joining me now is Indiana Lieutenant Governor and WNIN alum, Suzanne Crouch. Thanks for joining us today, Suzanne. I didn't know you used to work here.
I did, David. That was back, I think, in the 80s, maybe.
What did you do?
80s. I was the auction manager.
Really?
Yes, I was, and we had a lot of fun and raised a lot of money for public television.
You probably got a lot of stories to tell there, Suzanne, that you probably can't tell. Behind the scenes stuff. It gets kind of crazy.
It is very, it's an organized chaos.
It definitely is, it definitely is. Now, you commute a lot on Interstate 69,
right,
back and forth from your home in Vanderburgh County to Indianapolis,
correct,
back and forth a
yeah,
lot of times. How's that route now?
Well, they've opened the northbound lanes, you know, on that 37, that final stretch, so we don't have the detour through Martinsville. And I will tell you, it's cut about 10, 15 minutes off my drive time.
Really?
And, you know, I'm looking forward to the total completion, and I bet I'll be able to get up there in under 2 hours. So it really, you know, I was a county commissioner when they started to discuss the routes and, you know, approve them. And I remember hearing that I-69 was going to be an economic engine for Southwest Indiana. And that is exactly what has happened. The development that has taken place along I-69 down here in Vanderburgh and Warwick County, and the proposed development, and then around Washington, it's phenomenal.
So what's the timetable for the final opening?
2024.
2024.
And if I have anything to do with it, it's going to be sooner.
Well, of course, a big week at the State House, the Governor's State of the State address. How did that go? Do
you know, it was a kind of a recap of where Indiana's been and where we are now. We've had, since 2005, balanced budgets. We've cut taxes in the double digits. We have healthy surpluses. And in fact, $4 billion surplus at the end of the fiscal year last year. And that is allowing every taxpayer to get a taxpayer refund this year. And so, and in spite of COVID, Indiana has had record back-to-back years in 20 and 21 for creating jobs. Over 31,000 jobs in 20 and 21, new jobs, and the average wage of those jobs that the Economic Development Corporation brings into Indiana is $28 an hour, which we've raised that up. So economically, Indiana is really in good shape, and it's because of fiscal conservative leadership, that we need to continue. He touched upon education, touched upon health. One of the shout outs he gave was to me that we just a couple weeks ago announced the Lieutenant Governor's Roundtable on mental health, because the human cost of this pandemic is huge, David, and it's going to exponentially grow in years to come. When I travel the state, and I've been to all 92 counties many times over, I talk to school superintendents, to teachers, Boy Scout, Girl Scout leaders, anyone dealing with young people, and they will share that the amount of panic, anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, acting on suicide, and self-harm is greater than they've ever seen with our young people, and that's the future of Indiana. Before COVID, 1 out of 5 Hoosiers struggled with mental illness or addiction, and we all know people who have faced those challenges. And so this effort to be able to bring the corporate sector alongside what government is doing and look at how we can amplify what's working and fill in the gaps on what's needed is going to be critical to get those services to those Hoosiers in need.
So when does that initiative start?
Well, we actually kind of launched it at the end of 21. And some of the founding members were the Irsay family and the Colts, and of course they've been very active in Kick the Stigma campaign that they've been conducting. Also the Simon family and the Pacers, Eli Lilly, the Division of Mental Health and Addiction, and then this week the Indiana Chamber called and wants to be a part of that. So we're looking at raising private dollars to be able to come alongside the $350 million additional money that's been put into mental health in this upcoming year, to be able to really get more bang for our buck for Hoosiers that are struggling.
Well, back to the COVID-19 situation. I know the infections continue to rise an incredible number. I think we now 1.3 million Hoosiers, I think, have been infected with COVID-19, an incredible number. And of course the hospitalizations and everything that goes with that, the deaths. And so what's been the governor's opinion on this controversy over mandating masks in businesses?
Well, of course, you know, we do not support that, and the Supreme Court agreed with us. Indiana was one of many states that actually entered a lawsuit suing to prevent the mandate from moving forward.
So
and
why?
The Supreme Court,
Mm-hmm.
did rule yesterday that requiring employers over 100 to mandate that their employees have the vaccine or implement testing was not constitutional, and so they rolled that back. Governor Holcomb, in his address, his State of the State address, said that he pleaded that more Hoosiers would get vaccinated. We have about 3.5 million Hoosiers that are currently vaccinated. Mm-hmm. But as you pointed out, David, we have over a 14% positivity rate right now. Almost all of our counties are in the red. Our hospitalizations are greater than they have ever been in the past 5 years. Right now, we have more people hospitalized now than we did at the height of COVID back in 2020. And we only have 10% of our ICU beds available. This is putting an incredible strain and stress on our healthcare workers. You know, not just a physical stress, but an emotional stress. Mm-hmm. So the governor pleaded and encouraged with Hoosiers to get vaccinated.
Oh, I know he's on the air every week with that program there for a while with Dr. Box doing that.
But then again, respect Hoosiers' right to make choices regarding their personal health. If Hoosiers choose not to get vaccinated, please wear a mask. You know, please take the precautions to keep yourself, your family, and your neighbors safe.
It's kind of a balancing act there.
Yes.
You want to keep the economy going, but then again, you want to protect everybody. Well, that's a tough job to do that.
Yeah, but we have kept the economy going and growing. Our revenues have rebounded. You know, our more Hoosiers. We have 73,000 Hoosiers, more Hoosiers working today than we had before COVID. 73,000 more Hoosiers working today. Our unemployment is a 20-year low of 3%. So we are keeping our economy going here in Indiana. and doing everything we can to keep Hoosiers safe.
Okay. Another topic, some school districts are switching back to virtual learning. This goes back and forth, back and forth. That's got to be frustrating for everybody. So what are your thoughts on that? Keeping the kids in class or virtual learning? Is the state government have any policy on that?
Well, we leave it up to each school district to make the determination on what's best for their children that they're educating. Certainly, I think we all understand that children do better when they're in the classroom. And so to the extent that schools can have classroom learning and keep their students safe, that's the best way to go. But each school district has to make that determination. And of course, the health and safety of our children is the number one priority, but we've got to have them be educated too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another one. Here's a contentious topic. These are always fun. A bill going through both houses would require some schools to post their planned curriculum and allow parents to opt in or out of certain educational activities. The bill's been facing pushback from teachers, many teachers. What do you think about this bill?
Well, the General Assembly, the legislators proposed the bill because of concerns they were hearing from their constituents regarding what is being taught in the schools. And what I think, one of the kind of the things that happened as a result of COVID, with children being at home doing e-learning and with parents being at home teleworking and being more engaged in their education, parents became more aware of what their children were learning, and some parents became alarmed at what they thought their children were learning. And so this is an effort by the General Assembly to put the curriculum out there so that to provide more transparency and to provide more accountability for the studies that the children are being taught. Certainly this is receiving a lot of pushback from educators because it just is one more thing that a teacher has to do. Mm-hmm. But the bills are working their way through the House and the Senate. I suspect, as will happen with some of the 700 bills that have been filed, there'll be some changes before we get to the end.
That's the legislative process.
That is the legislative process.
Compromise. Okay, right now there are some bills that proposed that would raise the minimum wage in Indiana to $15 an hour. One would be by 2023, the other by 2026. Do you think it's time Indiana raised the minimum wage?
Do you know what? I'll tell you what, there's, when I talk to employers around the state, they're paying far in excess of the minimum wage to get people to work. And I think the market is pretty well driving that issue because workers are at a premium. We have the Great Resignation going on. More baby boomers are exiting the workforce. 10,000 a day are exiting. And we have increased demand from the public and from consumers, so that we have more jobs available than we have people to fill them. In fact, we have right now in Indiana about 150,000 jobs that are unfilled. And so as a result of that supply and demand, we're seeing employers pay far in excess of $15 an hour for many, many, many positions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we had House Bill 1077 would allow gun owners to carry without a permit, passed the Indiana House this week, headed to the Hoosier Senate. If signed into law, Indiana would join 21 other states which allow gun owners to carry firearms without a permit. What are your thoughts on not needing a permit to carry a handgun?
Well, I have a permit to carry a handgun, and certainly that bill is coming to the floor, I believe, in the House for a final vote this week. Mm-hmm. The Senate will have their own bill. In the past, the bill has passed the House, but it hasn't been able to make it out of the Senate. So I guess we will see how that evolves. But certainly the right of people to carry guns is, a constitutional right, and the whole bit of licensing. I believe the bill says that if you have a felony or you have a serious mental illness, that you cannot have a permit. So I guess we'll wait and see how that comes to us in the Senate. You know, as Lieutenant Governor, I am president of the Senate. And so when the Senate's in session, I'm conducting the Senate. And as president, I cast votes only if there's a tie.
Right.
So I watch the bills more closely when they get to the Senate. So we'll see, we'll see what happens.
Have you ever had to do that? Break a tie?
In the 5 years I've been presiding as president of the Senate, I've only had to break a tie one time.
When was that?
It was 2 years ago.
And what was the case?
The bill was on allowing charter schools to be able to benefit from a referendum if the school corporation agreed to let them actually benefit from the referendum. So yeah.
The Indiana session now underway. What do you think is going to happen in the next few weeks?
Well,
progress.
Well, there'll be a little over 700 bills that'll be filed, and we'll see probably right under 200 bills that'll actually pass.
Really?
So a lot of bills are going to die, and the bills will change. I just can't even recall a bill where it's introduced and it works through both houses, and the final vote is the same as what started. So they compare the legislative process to making sausage.
Yes.
This week, upcoming week, will be the last week for bills to get out of committee. So any bill that doesn't come out of the committee is going to die. And then they have to work through the second reading where amendments are put on and work through the final hearing. And then the first part of February, the bills from each house will go to the opposite house and start that process all over again. And then we'll end up the end of March, or I'm sorry, the beginning of March, and probably with right under 200 bills that are actually become law. And it works. I know that some would argue we don't need any more bills. We don't need any more laws. But as we move through the process, there's always something coming up that constituents have concerns over, and that's what the legislative process is for.
Now, does the governor have at least maybe one or two priorities that he's really pushing?
Well, of course, he is pushing he has asked that the General Assembly amend in our Constitution or change in our law 3 technical issues that will allow us to end the public health emergency. Currently there are 3 things in Indiana code, 3 technical things that do not allow us to end the public emergency. If we do, then we lose our federal money, for benefits. And so he's asked that happen. Also, he has proposed a tax cut from, for the General Assembly. While everyone's getting a taxpayer refund this year, the General Assembly, because of the surplus, we're predicted or projected at the end of this fiscal year to have a $5 billion surplus, and then the end of the next fiscal year, a $4 billion surplus. So the General Assembly is looking at what can we put in place to reduce taxes and the tax burden on Hoosier businesses and families. And so that is a priority for the governor also. It is, and then what we're really looking to, David, is the 23 session, which of course is the budget session. And how do we keep putting in place programs and initiatives that don't grow government but benefit Hoosiers? Because that budget session will become critical. We passed some incredible programs in this past session in 21, which was a budget session. So we put an additional $100 million into mental health, which I've already talked about. We also put $250 million extra dollars into expanding broadband throughout Indiana, because we learned during COVID that being connected is no longer a luxury. It's critical because of e-learning and teleworking and telehealth. And that $250 million is on top of the $100 million we have already invested. I oversee that broadband expansion as Lieutenant Governor. And to date, we've connected over 22,000 Hoosier families and businesses from expanding broadband. We also established the Indiana Connectivity Program. So now Hoosiers can either call a toll-free number, or they can go to our website and tell us if they're not connected. Or they can tell us if they don't have adequate speed. And then we look at how we can provide service to those Hoosiers. So we continue to move forward expanding broadband, and that continues to be a priority, David, because Purdue University back in 2018 did a study and said at that time we had 400,000 Hoosiers that were in internet darkness. If we could connect all of them over the next 20 years, it would result in $12 billion to our state's economy. It's how we're going to unlock economic opportunity in rural Indiana, is by connecting Hoosiers. We have some 40 million teleworkers in the country, remote workers, people that are working from home but working for some company anywhere in the United States. If we can get broadband everywhere in Indiana because of the quality of life we have and the affordability we have, we'll be able to attract some of those workers here to Indiana and grow our population, grow our revenues, and then hopefully connect them with employers here in Indiana. But it all depends on us getting Hoosiers connected.
Now, you mentioned that you go to all 92 counties on a regular basis here and there.
Yeah, I was in Adams County yesterday, the #1 county in Indiana because it's the first county alphabetically.
So that's a lot of traveling. And what do you hear from the folks in these counties? What's on their mind? What are their concerns? What are their worries or their dreams?
I think Hoosiers, first and foremost, are concerned about COVID because it has disrupted their lives. Whether they're parents with children, school children, or whether they're elderly people with, compromising health conditions. I think COVID has really disrupted everything and has provided a lot of uncertainty in our lives. So people feel the effects of that. And so that, of course, is a #1 concern. When I talk to employers, their #1 concern is they don't have enough workers. They could grow their businesses, but they don't have enough workers. And I don't know about you, David, but when I've been traveling the state, I'll pull into Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or go to a restaurant and it'll be closed because they don't have enough workers. That is a critical problem and issue. I mentioned mental health. That's an issue. When I'm in rural counties like Adams County last night, being connected, broadband is absolutely critical. I hear a lot of discussion about the READY grants, and as we know, Evansville and the Evansville region actually was the recipient of a $50 million READY grant that is going to build upon the $42 million regional cities grant that they received in 2016. It'll continue to put in place some transformational projects that hopefully will attract talent and keep young people here. In fact, this building we sit in was a recipient of the 2016 Regional Cities Initiative. So, it's about jobs, it's about the economy, it's about public health, it's about taxes, it's about education. I mean, people have real concerns, overall appreciate where Indiana is. And I hear all the time, people are so glad they live in Indiana. When they see what's going on in other states and by watching the news, they're so glad that they live in Indiana. But we still have challenges, and we still have things we need to address, and that's what we're doing.
Got about a minute or so left here. Tell us about the 2022 Hoosier Women's Arts Exhibition.
Well, we every year celebrate Hoosier women artists. If you are a woman artist here in Indiana, we invite you to submit your artwork. It's an initiative that my Lieutenant Governor's office, along with the Treasurer's office and the Indiana Arts Commission, have and put in place. And then we judge those works of art and then award, recognize them with awards here probably in March. But it's really an uplifting experience. It's a way to celebrate art here in Indiana, but it's a way to celebrate women. And you ought to come up for it. Because
well, I'd like to. My daughter's an art teacher.
Oh, is
she? She would love that too.
All right.
She teaches at Floyd Central outside New Albany.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure that you get an invitation.
Yeah, please do that.
Because you would be amazed at the artists that we have and the work that they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exciting. That's
exciting. It is.
Well, safe travels to you on I-69. I didn't know if I'd see it in my lifetime or not. It looks like we're going to have that direct route from Evansville to Indianapolis in the next few years. 2024. Well, I'll hold you to that, okay?
Yeah.
And we're going to get the new bridge across the Ohio.
Yes.
That's down the road too.
Yeah.
So a lot of big things going on.
That's exactly right, and we're on the move.
So you're optimistic, obviously, about this year.
The glass is always half full.
It is. Suzanne Crouch, so nice to have you as a guest here on Lawmakers.
Thank you, David.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
And our next scheduled guest is Indiana State Representative Wendy Mcnamara. I'm David James, and thanks for joining us on WNIN Lawmakers.